What's up, guys? How's it going? Welcome back to my channel, or if this is your first time, welcome to the channel. Today we're going to be discussing Strefan, the Mars progenitor. He is a Precon commander that came out recently with Crimson Vows. I wanted to do this video later because I wanted to get personal experience with and against the deck. So I'm not going to be covering like a deck tech and how to upgrade it. I will give you some suggestions if you want them, but mostly I just want to talk about my experiences with and against the deck, because that might be more insightful for you than just telling you, hey, if you buy these cards and put them in, your deck will be better, because everybody has different experiences, right? We all have different play groups, we all have different ways of playing. So for me, getting into it, playing Strefan was very frustrating. Right out the box, I played him for the first weekend, just pre-constructed as is without changing any cards. And then the second weekend, I made changes. The third weekend, I made upgrades. And then last weekend, I didn't play because LA Comic Con and my group was out taking pictures with Jason David Frank and the rest of the Power Ranger crew that was there. So we didn't play, but my experiences with him, just pre-constructed as was very troublesome. I was very concerned before the Precon came out, looking at the deck list, which I did a video on, because I felt like he had too many high cost cards and not enough mana ramp and card draw to support being able to play anything. That was kind of the problem, was just Strefan only gets out creatures, and when opponents lose life, or not opponents, when players lose life, because that includes yourself, while he's out, he makes blood tokens at the end of the turn. The only problem is that first effect, if you get him out within your 4 turns, then he's kind of just dead in the water. You can attack with him your next turn if he's still on the field. He doesn't have haste, but he does have flying, and you want to hit multiple players, even yourself, to get more blood tokens, because you get blood tokens for each player who lost life that turn. That was your turn, including yourself. So if you lose life and you make each opponent lose life through an AoE effect, let's say you have an effect where everyone just loses 1 life. Actually, there's a card that does that. Then you make 4 blood tokens, which is great. But the problem is that, you know, you have to enable something to do that. You know, it can't be Strefan because he can't attack unless you have haste. Cryptolith Fragment, when you tap it for mana, each player loses 1 life. So this card with Strefan is amazing, and it's definitely a card worth putting in his deck to upgrade him with. But like I said, it's the problem. I felt like his first effect was only on your turn. You get these blood tokens. At least if you had got 1 token per turn, if an opponent lost life, or if a player lost life, including yourself, then that would be a little bit more helpful. So that way, at least when it gets back to your turn, you will guaranteed have a way to turn this deck on. And that was the biggest issue. Too many high cost cards in your hand, and just not enough ways to play cards or to get answers. There were other groups that played the deck pre-constructed. I forgot who the other group was. I said it in the video, but there was one group playing the Precons from Midnight Hunt and from Crimson Vows, just as they were, and the person who was playing Strefan could not do anything, and everybody just felt bad. And I had the same experience, opening up with a handful of like 5, 6, 7 drops. I think there were like 17 cards, I think I had counted, that were higher than 5 in the deck that were creatures, and you get a lot of them to your hand. So you're usually just stuck with a dead hand. For me, I mulliganed so many times that at one point my play group was like, hey, just keep mulligan, and until you get a good enough hand, just take the 7. Like, just take the 7. Like, they just had to just keep telling me that, because it was like, man, okay, I'm mulligan again. I'm sorry to hold you guys up. Mulligan again. I'm not getting any land. Sorry, don't mean to hold you up. And I just kept apologizing. And the deck just really had no good land base, along with no good mana rocks. There were about 7 mana rocks. Getting into, I can remember exactly what they were too. So you have Rakdos Signet, Commander Sphere, Fire and Charcoal Diamond. So that's 4. Unstable Obelisk for 5. 6 was Soul Ring. 7 was Arcane Signet. Those were your 7 mana ramps. And not having those in your opening hand completely sucks. Because you need it. You really need it. When you have cards like Markov Enforcer, Crossway Troublemakers, like, yeah, you want to get these cards out through Strefan's effect, but you need players to lose life in order to sacrifice 2 blood tokens, which I feel it should have been 1, since it's just the awkward effect, but you have to sacrifice 2 blood tokens to get out one of these big 6 or higher drop vampires from your hand onto the field, and most of the time you just wind up discarding cards to the graveyard with no way to get them back from the graveyard, because Strefan the build is just, it feels rushed, it feels clunky, it doesn't feel like it works. But playing the deck itself, I did see a lot of good in the deck. I did see some strong explosive turns and some really good combos. Some things that really stood out were honestly these top 4 cards right here. Markov Enforcer, Crossway Troublemakers, Glasscast Heart, and Olivia's Wrath. These 4 cards you want to see on the field. Just in general, you just want to have them on the field. They make the deck run so well. Honestly, if you just have these 4 cards, you're winning. In like maybe Patron of the Vein or Necropolis Regent, cards like those, like with these cards on the field, will make your day so much better. But that's kind of the thing, you get a taste of this if it ever lines up, if you ever survive long enough to get cards like that on the field. When it works, you feel great. There's this surge of power in this deck where things just start working, the wheels start turning, and people start losing life. Creatures are dying. You become this big threat. Your creatures have death touch and lifelink. You're gaining life. You're drawing cards. You're getting blood tokens. You're getting +1 counters on your vampires. You're making your opponents exile cards, and you're destroying cards. There are a lot of things that you can do with this deck that just make it work, and it's fun. The problem that I found early on was that cards like Nirkana Revenant did not help the deck. You don't want these high drop vampires if you have no ways to make blood tokens. That was just it. Like, if the big creatures, like cards like Markov Enforcer, that make you blood tokens and they're big creatures, they're kind of like helping the engine and helping you further the deck. Even cards like Crossway Troublemakers, which is a draw engine, and giving vampires lifelink helps, but creatures like Nirkana Revenant, by the time you get out Nirkana Revenant, you're pretty much not doing anything. It's like, okay, your Swamp's tap for double now, but what are you using that for? You need more ways to make blood tokens. That's what your focus becomes. I need more blood tokens. I need more vampires. I need more draw. I need more mana ramp to either create or sacrifice the blood tokens, because you can use them as a draw outlet, but you need something. So that's kind of my biggest issue, and that's what I would say personally from me playing the deck. It felt like when I was playing with Strefan at the helm, it felt like Strefan wasn't a good enough card. Like, he needed the flying and haste to make it function. Him being a 4-drop commander is good, but if I don't have ways to give him haste or to protect him until my next turn, I couldn't cast him again. So once he becomes 6 or higher, I don't have any mountains, I don't have any lands, I don't have any mana ramp to get him back out to try to wait another round of the table to then attack with him again, when everybody can see what he does and they're like, oh, I have a full turn around the table to get rid of him to prevent you from playing these big vampires, and that just feels bad. And also the blood token generation, there needs to be more of it in some way. But overall, the deck is fun when it works. The only problem I had was trying to get it to work was the biggest issue. So upgrading the deck myself, the first thing I did was I took out all the cards with Madness, and that became a collective agreement amongst everybody that I met who also played the Precon, which was take out everything that has Madness and just add better cards. For me, when I took out the Madness cards, because they weren't working, you need blood tokens to do the Ange effect of discarding a card and drawing a card. And for the Madness cards, it just made no sense at all for me to have cards with Madness if I can't even pay the 2 to sacrifice the blood token and sacrifice a creature and then play it. I didn't have enough mana with the Precon as it was to afford Madness or to afford the Madness cost. Cynthia's Masquerade was a good card because of the first strike and giving vampires +1 counters, but you didn't care about the Madness. You just wanted the first strike and the +1 counters. That became the main focus, which was just, can I please get more mana? So when I upgraded it, I added about there's 7 mana ramp in there. I went up to about 14 with mana rocks, and that made the deck run so much better. I added in actual card draw, like Sign in Blood, and other cards like Ancient Carving or Craving, I think it was. Cards that just allow you to draw, or cards that you discard a card, draw 2, create a treasure token or something like that. Unexpected Windfall. I created how do I put it? I created a way to gain resources and optimize the speed of the deck, because that's what it needed. It needed card draw and mana ramp to make it function. I focused on that and I started having fun. For other people, they had the same experience. Take out all the Madness cards, add in card draw and mana ramp, and the deck runs faster. I never had really big explosive turns with Strefan on the field, or Markov Enforcer, or Crossway Troublemakers like some of the people that I met that were playing the deck. Where I had explosive turns was with the partners. So Camber and Lauren, I forgot their name. But the partner with commanders, they actually made the deck really good. Just getting into them, especially Camber. Camber was a great card in this deck, and I feel like the partners themselves just deserve so much more, because these two were so much fun. I had more fun with them on the field than Strefan on the field, and that felt pretty bad. With Lorraine, I was using the blood tokens that I was getting from Camber to goad my opponent's creatures at instant speed. So if they were going to attack me, like, oh, okay, well, you're declaring an attack on me, I'm going to goad your creature. Now it has to attack someone else. And that kept me alive. That kept me going, literally. And then from my opponents playing sacrifice decks or aristocrat decks or graveyard decks, I was able to gain life and get blood tokens to where it was turning the deck on and just getting it going. And that was the most fun that I had, was with those two commanders, to be honest, on the field, and Strefan just in the command zone. Like, it just, at one point I just stopped playing Strefan and I was just getting the partners to my hand in my opening hands. I found them, I enjoyed it, and it felt like the deck just synced up, where it was like, oh, you like these two, so the deck just started bringing them to me faster each game, and I started to enjoy it a little bit more and more and more. But that's kind of a negative, where I don't feel like you should have to play the other commanders in the deck to enjoy the deck, but we'll get into that later. From watching other people play the deck, because I want to waffle on forever. From watching other people play the deck, I saw some really explosive turns. One of my friends who bought the Precon and just played it as is, He got the Crossway Troublemakers on the field with the Glass Cast Heart. Necropolis Regent. Who else? Let me go up. And it was someone else that I'm thinking of. I can't think of who it was. That else he had. But Bloodlord of Vosgoth. So he was like doing amazing things, like to the point where he was winning back to back at one point. He had struggles too with lands. Like at one point, one game, he couldn't even get a mountain. He just couldn't get a mountain, and there was no way to draw to get more mountains or to search for mountains. It was just horrible. But he had some really good explosive turns where he won a few games, and we just couldn't stop him. Bloodlord of Vosgoth, he was using Strefan's effect to bring in a creature like Crossway Troublemakers. So Crossway Troublemakers came in, did the damage. Main phase 2, he had enough mana because he didn't play anything. Main phase 2 plays Bloodlord of Vosgoth. Bloodlord of Vosgoth comes in with 3 counters on it because it has Bloodlust 3. An opponent lost life that turn. So then other creatures started coming in and gaining stuff, and then he had got Necropolis Regent. So every time he attacked, he had creatures with flying. So every time he attacked, just people lost life. He got blood tokens. His creatures got +1 counters, and the deck was just on fire. Like, we couldn't stop it. It was just such a big threat. Creatures were getting bigger, stronger. Like, things were happening. Markov Enforcer hit the field, and then he was dealing damage. He was dealing death touch damage to creatures, gaining life, making blood tokens, attacking. Like, eventually he ran out of gas where he just couldn't get any more creatures. But in those turns, he was so explosive. He was so big. Like, his creatures were so huge that we just couldn't deal with it, to where he just won. And that was the fun of seeing that deck in action. It was like, wow, if this deck had more ways to draw, which he said himself, he just ran out of gas. He couldn't do anything else because he had nothing to draw cards with. Because he didn't want to use the blood tokens to draw, because you have to discard. That's a part of the blood tokens, which I found in the rulings that day. You cannot activate the blood tokens effect if you don't have cards in hand. So if you have nothing to discard, then sacrifice, then draw, you can't activate it. And that was interesting to me, because I thought it was like, oh, well, even if you don't have anything to discard, you can still just sacrifice it and draw, because that's just a part of the effect. But no, that's an activation cost that you have to do. It's mandatory. So, because he didn't have any cards in hand, he couldn't use the blood tokens to draw cards because he had nothing to discard, which is why I looked up that effect to see if he could do anything. And he still won, but we couldn't do anything, and he ran out of gas. It was like, oh, you could see it in his face where he was just like, oh, this deck is working. I see. He was like, I'm keeping this deck now. Because of that, he had fun. He saw the power of it. He saw this is exactly what he wanted. He was like, I can work with this. I can build around this. I can upgrade this. This is fun. It was all the other times when he didn't have land, he didn't have mana ramp, didn't have card draw. He was just sitting there with an empty field, not even wanting to play his commander, because if he plays his commander, he has no way to do anything that turn. And it was just like, those were the moments that sucked. Of course, that's for any deck, but precons should be made a little bit better. This precon did feel like it was rushed, like they kind of just threw stuff together, where they added in the cards with madness. They should have added in cards from the set of Crimson Vow. They should have added in more vampires that ETB and create blood tokens. They should have added in cards into the deck like Olivia's Attendants, which is a 6-drop vampire 6/6 that has menace, and when Olivia's Attendants deal damage, create that many blood tokens. That should have been in the precon. It's a big creature. It's coming in. It works with Strefan's effect. You need that effect. There also should have been more ways to make treasure tokens. They should have just added in draw cards that, like Unexpected Windfall, for example, to make treasure tokens. You need the mana ramp, and just having one creature that's a 3/1, which can die to almost anything, it just doesn't help, because it's like it's there and then it dies. You know, like someone can just ping every creature for 1 and bam, it's dead, and you get 1 treasure token for nothing. You know, like it doesn't help the deck at all. So there were definitely things that I saw from other people that were frustrated with the deck, that were like, man, if this deck was just built better, if they had just added in cards from the set. But there is potential in the deck, and that's kind of the good thing, is that there is potential, there is room for upgrade, and when it works, watch out. So that's it for this. That's kind of just my experience with and against the deck. Against the deck, both Precon and upgraded, it's a terror. Once you get cards like Cryptolith Fragment that deal damage to all players by tapping it, including yourself, you get those 4 tokens from Strefan. Cards like Bantu's Monument, which whenever you cast a creature, each opponent loses a life and you gain a life. You know, those cards help giving Strefan protection, like Lightning Greaves, or, you know, I forgot the name of the boots. Lightning Greaves or the boots. I can't. Why I forgot them at this point in time. He needs hexproof. He needs shroud. He needs something. He needs haste. Strefan definitely needs haste and protection. But once you have all that stuff together, the deck just works, and it works very well. I would definitely add in some cards for Reanimator purposes, just because there's no way to get cards back from the graveyard. So I would add in cards like what's her name? Null Priest, from the Zendikar set. She has a kicker cost where you can get back a creature from the graveyard. Bloodline Necromancer is already in the deck, so that's the only way to get cards back. Adding in Drana, Last Blood Chief, to get you back more vampires from the graveyard if they die. And of course, Olivia herself, Crimson Bride, because that's your other Reanimator. But if you're gonna put Olivia in the deck to cheat her out, it kind of doesn't make sense. You better off just putting her as the head of the deck, to be honest. Unless you just really like Strefan. I mean, Strefan's cool, but with his effect, Olivia's not going to get her effect because she's already tapped and attacking. So you're not going to get another creature off her. You will with Bloodline Necromancer, because Bloodline Necromancer, when it enters the battlefield, you get a creature back from the graveyard. But with Olivia, you won't. And also with Drana, you won't, because she's already tapped and attacking with Strefan's effect. So keep that in mind. But yeah, like I said, there are definitely a lot of cards that you can upgrade this with. The deck is fun. The deck hits hard. Once it gets going, and it's an absolute terror to watch. It's a terror to be on the receiving end of the onslaught of damage and high-powered vampires. And it just gets scary really fast. It just snowballs. It's just one of those decks that's just, it snowballs, and before you know it, if you don't have a board wipe, you're all dead type of thing. But I definitely think it's fun and it's worth the time. It's just, it may not be worth the investment. I think there are better commanders than Strefan. The partner commanders, Camber and Lorraine, they were definitely more fun in my experience than him because of what my opponents were playing, because they were playing aristocrat decks or sacrifice decks. I definitely would put Strefan in the 99 with them. I would put him in the 99 with Olivia. I think he definitely belongs in vampire tribal decks moving forward, because he does make blood tokens and he does cheat out other vampires. Him and Olivia together on the field, if you have a decent way to get cards in hand with draw and then get cards to the graveyard, maybe you have rummage cards that you can play where, or other cards like rummage, where you're drawing cards and putting cards in your graveyard at the same time, refilling your hand and then filling your graveyard. With him and Olivia, make a very powerful combo, and it's pretty freaking scary to see it, because he's getting cards on the field from hand, he's getting cards from the graveyard to the field. They're both tapped and attacking, and it just gets scary out of hand really fast. And then when you have cards like Necropolis Regent that's going to give all of those creatures +1 counters when they deal damage, it's amazing. Like, it's amazing to watch. It's scary to be on the opposite end of, but it's definitely what I've wanted from vampires in a long time. I've been complaining for years about how vampires aren't aggressive enough, how they're not, you know, hunter-ish or just, you know, just attacky. They're kind of just too party-centric, too fun-loving, too let's make the whole world vampires. This vampire deck is more like, we're just gonna kill everybody. We're going crazy. We're gonna attack you. We don't care about you becoming a vampire. We just want you dead. And I love that about this deck, and I want to see more vampires like this moving forward. But yeah, that's it for me. I hope this helped. In retrospect, if you want to play Strefan, take out the madness. That's my idea. Take out madness, add in card draw and mana ramp. Have fun. That's pretty much the best way I can say for upgrading this precon. And also just play the deck. You know, I don't know if you've played the deck or not, or if you played against it, but definitely, I mean, it's easy to shut down this deck. Just destroy its mana ramp and its lands, and it's done. I mean, that's the best way to shut it down if you're having trouble playing against it. You know, everything revolves around Strefan coming out if he's at the helm. So just get rid of him a couple times or destroy people's lands if your group is okay with this land destruction. But if not, then just destroy Strefan. Counter him when he's cast. Once he gets to like 6 or higher, there's no point in trying to play him anymore after that because he's too slow. So it kind of hurts, but that's the fastest way to just deal with it, is just get rid of the commander. Yeah. So I will be covering my experience with the next precon. I hope this video helped you. I hope you got some good insight for playing the deck or playing against the deck. From my experiences over the past almost a month now, 4 weeks of playing with and against this deck. And yeah, I'll see you guys in the next video. Peace.